Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajnana Dimirandhasya Jnana Janashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Amriteshwarya Namaha Om Amriteshwarya Namaha Om Amriteshwarya Namaha. Om Amriteshwarya Namaha. Let's begin with a short meditation. Kindly sit straight and make sure your vertebral column, your spinal column is erect. Mentally check if there is any tension in any part of your body, and if there is any, just try to relax. And as the relaxation occurs, you slowly close your eyes without any effort. Now we'll chant Om 3 times, and as we chant Om, imagine the sound of Om to arise from your navel area, and visualize the sound traveling upwards along your spinal column. Now kindly take a deep breath. And now feel the reverberations of Om in each and every particle of your body, your whole being, reverberating along with the Om sound. Now slowly bring your focus onto your breathing. Breathing normally but with full awareness of each and every inhalation and exhalation that occurs through your body. Follow your breath. And now as you breathe in, chant the mantra Ma silently along with your in-breath. And Om when you breathe out. So Ma when you breathe in, and Om when you breathe out. Ma is a representation of divine love, and Om of divine light. And even though you don't have to visualize it, just feel the vibrations of love and light along with your breath. Slowly and slowly, the reverberations of Ma and Om becomes more and more subtle. You can just feel the energy of Ma and Om as you breathe in and out. Now feeling the love and the light and the peace and the compassion in your heart. Imagine a ray of light going out from your heart to all the beings in the world, just like the rays of the sun. And as the light falls on them, imagine they also become more loving, more peaceful, more blissful, and more compassionate. And as we visualize this, kindly chant the mantra Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu along with me 9 times. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu 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 Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Om Dhyayamo Dhvalapagunthanapatim Tejomayim Naishtikim Snigdha Pangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmidashri Mukhem Valsalyamritavarshinim Sumadhuram Sankirtanalapinim Shamangim Madhusikta Suktim Amritanandatmikam Ishwarim Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryandam Bande Guru Parambaram Srude Smrde Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Logashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Bhadarayanam Sutrabhashyakrita Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishwarau Guru Ragmedi Murti Beda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Om Amriteshwarye Namaha Om Amriteshwarye Namaha Om Amriteshwarye Namaha. So we have been looking at the Srimad Bhagavatam, Skanda 3 and chapter 32. And we were almost at the end of the chapter, and where Lord Kapila is giving this spiritual advice to his mother, Devahuti, which is the essence of Sankhya Yoga, the philosophy expounded by Kapila. And he tells his mother that whoever hears or teaches this with faith and with a mind concentrated on me attains to my state. So here the question, there are a couple of questions. One is what is his state? And secondly, what does faith mean? So, as we understand the state of a realized soul, in one way we can just describe it as to be very simple. The same state that we enjoy during our deep sleep state, where there is no disturbance of the mind and everything is completely dissolved, and where you feel that the mind is not impeding along with the thoughts the reality with which we see. And what we see and what we experience is beyond the mind and the intellect to comprehend. And therefore, it cannot be described as much. And the question is, how do we understand that this is true to have that kind of a faith, right? So when we see great saints like Amma, we can understand that what state of being they are. And it is, in one way, you can say it's also infectious, because when we come to Amma, one of the things that everybody says and everybody experiences is the peace of mind. The mind becomes calm, quiet, and the disturbances of the mind become so less that in her presence, just we feel that peace, and which is continuous and flowing like that. So that's the state in which we can sort of describe what it feels to be like Kapila, or what it feels like Amma. And he says that if one hears or teaches it with faith, faith here, Vishwasaha, it means, as according to the scriptures, it says Vishwasa means Shraddha, or attention, awareness in the words of the Master and the scriptures is necessary to have faith. And in one sense, you can say that it is kind of a blind belief and blind faith to have this kind of understanding about what it means. And initially, though it may be blind, we will slowly understand that this is what is not really blind, that the rest, everything was blind. And why it is needed is because it transcends both the intellect and the mind. So if you cannot comprehend anything without the intellect and the mind, then how are you going to explain with the logic? And the mind always wants, or the intellect always wants to put things into a box and try to understand it. Whereas this cannot be understood by the mind or the intellect, so it cannot be boxed inside the brain. So if we have to have that kind of an understanding which goes beyond the realm of the mind, then we have to have that faith, which is, as we call, the leap in the spiritual sense, to understand that there is something beyond all these things. And it's just that mere understanding that there is something. And so we try to have that kind of an awareness which Amma is inculcating throughout her life and throughout each and every moment of her life. And as I said, the example, since Amma is right in front of us and she is the example of or she exemplifies this state, then there is no need for us to go and in search of anything else. So here, Kapila is saying that if we have that kind of an awareness, that it exists, and that we also can reach to that state. That's what he says. That if the mind becomes concentrated here means it goes beyond all the thoughts. And if the thoughts cease, and it is where this, as I was saying earlier, the state of cessation of all the thoughts, like in deep sleep, then definitely we can also attain to that state. So it is not just merely the experience of one or two saints, as we know. It is the experience of so many saints, and all of them have said the same thing, and which has been described in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, and which says that this does exist. So that's also very important for us to have an understanding through the scriptures as to this reality, that which we do not comprehend right now exists beyond the understanding of our mind and intellect. So we'll conclude with the chapter 33 by Devahuti's hymn to Lord Kapila. So hearing the words of her son Kapila, Devahuti, the wife of Kardama Prajapati, had the covering of ignorance pulled away from her mind. She then circumambulated Kapila, made prostrations before him, and sang his praise as follows. Even Brahma, born of thy navel lotus, could only meditate in his mind on that unique form of thine, stretched on the cosmic waters, the form which is the seed of the world manifestation and the source of nature's power, and in which the whole of nature is involved in latency. It is indeed a wonder that such a being could be born in my womb, and with thy power diversified in the process of nature's evolution, thou, the unperturbed, the truth-willed, and the Lord of all jivas, and the insurmountable one with powers and attributes that appear contradictory, dost manifest this whole universe. O mystery of mysteries, that such a being who holds the entire universe in his abdomen should be born in me, in my womb. But these contradictions are not contradictions in thee. For didst thou not appear as an infant sucking thy toe, lying on a banyan leaf that came floating on the cosmic waters of the universal deluge? O all-pervading being, assumption of a body by thee is for the suppression of evil and the advancement of holy living. This also is an incarnation of thine, like the cosmic boar, the purpose of this incarnation being the revelation of the path leading to the realization of the Atman. So here, she's praising him, as I was saying in Bhagavatam, wherever they will see occasion to praise the Lord, suddenly they will put that praise. So she's talking about the 10 avatars of Vishnu, and she's saying that just like the boar avatar and Varaha avatar, and she's saying that you are also this manifestation of the same supreme power. And then, as some of you would already know, at the end of the cycle of creation, then there is the pralaya. There's a huge flood where the whole of the creation is deluged and submerged under water, and then the Lord Vishnu is lying on a banyan leaf So that's what she's talking about, coming floating on the cosmic waters. So that's the very end. So she's saying that, didn't you come as an infant sucking thy toe? So that's what the imagery is here, when towards the end of the creation, the Lord comes just like a small baby sucking his toe, lying on the banyan leaf. So that is described here. And she says, by hearing thy name, by singing thy glory, by prostrating before thee, nay, even by thinking of thee, once the greatest of sinners is transformed into a righteous man worthy of performing sacrificial rites. What then can thy blessed vision not achieve? So, oh, how wonderful, how ever low born a man might be. If he has thy name on his lips, he is indeed elevated by that. For those who take thy name with faith must have already practiced austerities, performed fire sacrifices, bathed in holy waters, and studied the Vedas. They indeed are the worthy men. Salutations to Brahman, the Supreme Person, Mahavishnu, incarnate as Kapila, who is fit to be meditated upon by all contemplative souls, who outshines all the splendors of nature's forces, and who is the source of the wisdom of the Vedas. So again, she's talking about just the benefit of saying that if you just hear the name or sing thy glory or even just chant the name on the lips, what it can do. So he's saying that even the worst sinners can become saint by doing all these things. And she's also saying that it also takes a lot of births to practice austerities, perform in the previous births they must have performed fire sacrifices and bathed in holy waters and studied the Vedas. So that is how one becomes worthy. And Maitreya said, being thus praised, Kapila, the divine incarnate and the loving son of his mother, said to Devahudi in a grave and imposing tone, O mother, I have given you a kind of spiritual discipline that is easy for you to practice. By practicing it, you can easily become liberated in life. Bestow serious attention on this doctrine expounded by me. It has been the support of all seekers of Brahman. By following it, one will attain to my state from which there is no return to samsara. And those who do not follow it return to the world of birth and death again and again. Having thus imparted the truth about himself to his mother, Kapila now departed from that place with the permission of his illumined mother. Seated in her ashrama, which was like a floral wreath on the river Saraswati, Devahudi concentrated her mind on the Supreme Being as instructed by her son. So Kapila says, so mother, here if you just follow my instructions, you can definitely become liberated in this life itself. Liberation means what? So there is no return to samsara. Samsara meaning the world of birth and death again and again. As Lord Shankaracharya says in his Bhaja Govindam, Punarapi Jaranam, Punarapi Maranam. So again, going back and being born again, dying again. So you don't have to do that. That is what it means here. So he says, if you just practice this is enough. And you just have to put a little bit of practice. So that is what exactly Amma tells us also. And we definitely can become liberated in this life itself. We don't have to have so many births together. And if we put a little bit of spiritual discipline and practice constantly, then it's very easy for us to gain this liberation. And he's giving us the enthusiasm to do our spiritual practices every day. So that's what we have to do. And then what happens to Devahuti is that by bathing in the three sandhyas of the day, that is the uh, dawn and the dusk and the middle of the day, her hair became coppery, short and matted. Dressed in the tree bark cloth, her body became very slender owing to the rigors of her austere practices. Devahuti had some time back abandoned her household, conjured up by the power of the tapas and the yoga of the Prajapati, a household that was unparalleled in grandeur and an attraction even for the devas. It had clean milk white beds, furniture of gold and ivory, golden stools, soft pillows. It had walls of pure crystal and emerald panels, on which shone lamps made of diamonds held by female figurines. It had courtyards with flowering plants and heavenly trees, wherein the delightful cooing of birds in pairs. So it goes on and goes on and on. And it says how, beautiful their house was, how, in one sense, worldly sense, it was so beautiful, and how she had just thrown away all these things. And then he says the separation from her son, following on the heels of her departure of the husband, who adopted the ascetic life, plunged Devahuti into grief in spite of her knowledge of spiritual verities, just as a cow is afflicted when its offspring is removed from her. And thanks to her grief, she thought constantly of her son Kapila, who was none but Hari, which is Lord Vishnu, and her mind was consequently freed from every kind of worldly attachment, including that to her splendid home. As instructed by her son, she meditated on the form of the Lord, on each of his parts individually, arid, on all parts together, on that one whose face is calm and perceivable through intense meditation. And by an unbroken flow of love towards him, by the practice of intense dispassion, by the observance of strict discipline in eating and other matters of daily life, by acquiring knowledge on spiritual matters, by the experience of the all-inclusive being with its veil of Maya, which is removed by constant contemplation of him with a pure mind, by the elimination of individuality that is attained through the fixing of the mind on Bhagavan, that is the Lord, who is none else but Brahman, and who is the support of Jiva. By means of such disciplines, she attained to supreme peace, having removed all the obstacles to the dawn of this knowledge. So, it shows the different aspects of spiritual practices. She is saying that meditation, that is meditating on the form, then also having intense dispassion, vairagya, and then by observance of strict disciplines in eating and other matters of daily life, and then acquiring knowledge, that is having reading the the scriptures. So swadhyayana. So all these things, then she said she is have attained that supreme state of peace, unflowing peace. And so Devahuti thus attains the state of samadhi continually and had transcended the sphere of experiences bound by the gunas of Prakriti. She did not feel any identification even with her body. And in spite of this elimination of bodily consciousness, her body survived as it was fed by others. And she said that what happened is her body, purified by yoga, was converted into the best of holy rivers, which aids the dawn of enlightenment, and which came to be resorted to many enlightened ones. So she attained the self, who is called Paramatman, and Brahma Nirvana and Bhagavan. So that's what happened to Devahuti. So again, why they are describing this? again and again. So it is for us to understand that this state can be achieved by us also. So the same state which has been attained by so many saints and sages, we can also do that, and especially in the presence of Amma, if we have that enthusiasm, if we do the spiritual practices every day, then this can be attained by us also. So by repeating this again and again, they are giving us the enthusiasm and also the effort that we have to put to go forward with this. So Kapila, the divine incarnate, as a great yogi, having somehow consoled his mother, left his father's ashrama at Bindu Saras and traveled towards the northeast. Praised and hymned by Siddhas, Charanas, Munis and Apsaras, by the subtle beings, and welcomed by the masters of philosophy, he established his residence at a place respectfully offered by the Lord of the Seas, where he is still said to remain in spiritual absorption for the welfare of all the worlds. O pure-minded one, with this I have finished narrating to you the sacred conversation between Kapila and Devahudi, about which you question me. And whoever hears or teaches with faith and devotion this most profound exposition of the sage Kapila's views on the doctrine of the Atman will acquire unshakable devotion to the feet of Lord Vishnu and ultimately attain to his feet. So he's saying that what happened to Kapila also. Kapila traveled towards the northeast, and where he was supposed to have established and remain in spiritual absorption. So, and so here we see the ending of the conversation between Kapila and Devahudi, and the explanation of the Sankhya Yoga. And he is repeating that whoever teaches with faith and devotion this doctrine of the Atman, that is the Sankhya Yoga, will acquire unshakable devotion to the feet of Lord Vishnu and ultimately attain to his feet. So Lord Vishnu here means the Supreme Brahman. It can be your Guru, it can be the Supreme Consciousness, whatever name you call it, Bhagavan, Lord, God, everything. So that is the end of the third skanda. And now we go to the fourth skanda. So the fourth skanda, it says, this giving an introduction. The fourth skanda with 31 chapters is supposed to deal with the Visarga, while the third one is stated before is said to deal with Sarga. So it will be remembered that the distinction between these expressions is Sarga is natural evolution or pre-creative evolution of the categories. And Visarga is bringing into existence the various species of jivas or beings inhabiting them. And now a study of this third skanda would show that while Sarga, that is the natural evolution of the categories, is described in two places, especially in Kapilopadesha, in great detail. So we saw in that when Kapila was giving his mother Devahudi, he was explaining how the evolution of each species, and then going from from a worm to insect to the bird to animal to a human being, and saying that an equal or greater part of the skanda is occupied with Brahma's creative activity also, and the skanda can therefore be well considered as dealing with Sarga and Visarga both. So similarly, so in the third skanda, what happens, you can see that it deals with natural evolution and also the Visarga, which is bringing into existence the various species of beings also. So similarly in the fourth skanda also, Visarga, in the sense of Brahma's creation, finds very little place. From what we can understand with the creation of Swayambhu Manu and Shatarupa, Brahma's creation stops. So after the creation of Swayambhu Manu and Shatarupa, Brahma's creation stops because reproduction comes in from then onwards. So the fourth skanda is dealing more with the Vamshanucharita. That is, the Vamshanucharita means the stories of different dynasties, the dynasties of pious kings, than with Visarga. And it's only with the schematic mentality of the commentators that sees such a regularity of treatment. And the whole scheme of the Puranas is so amorphous that the 10 characteristics attributed to these writings are found scattered in different skandas without much regularity. And the skanda, that is the fourth skanda, opens with the life of Swayambhu Manu and his wife Shatarupa, who were born from Brahma's body as man and woman. And they became husband and wife, the first human beings of the two sexes to bring forth issues by sexual reproduction. And they had 3 daughters, Akudi, Prasudi and Devahuti, and the 2 sons, Uttanapada and Priyavrata. And we will be seeing all these people later on, Uttanapada and Priyavrata, from which Prahalada and all the others are coming. So we can see it is actually Dhruva who will be, Priyavrata's son. So we will see this later. And we already saw that Devahuti, who was the daughter of Swayambhu Manu, and whose son was Kapila, and who's married to Kardama Prajapati in the third skanda. And the fourth skanda deals mainly with other daughters and their progeny, and also with Uttanapada and his progeny. And many of them had numerous progeny, and the multiplication of the species went on to the satisfaction of Brahma. And Swayambhuva Manu had 3 daughters, Akudi, Prasudi and Devahuti. Of these daughters, Swayambhuva, the story of Devahuti, who became the wife of Kardama and the mother of Kapila, has already been told in the third skanda. Her 9 daughters were married to several Prajapatis like Marichi, whose issue went to fill the world. And Swayambhuva's first daughter, Akudi, married to Prajapati Ruchi, had a son and a daughter, Yajna and Dakshina. And they were considered divine. It is significant to note that this brother and sister became husband and wife and had 12 issues, who became devas pertaining to the Manvantara of Swayambhuva Manu. It should be noted that a Manvantara is the period of rule of a Manu extending over 311 million and 40,000 years, human years. And each Manvantara has its own devas, Saptarishis, Manu, Manuputras, Indra, and divine incarnations, and especially pertaining to that age. In the lifetime of each Brahma, there are 14 Manvantaras. So you can just think about these times, but it's not very important, so don't feel confused by all these names and the timings and all these things. So don't worry. So, but just to show you, so each Manvantara means the time period of each Manvantara is 311 million years and 40,000 years. And so the Brahma, the life of Brahma is 14 Manvantaras like that. So just multiply 311 million by 14. And one of the very important episodes in the Skanda originates from Prasuti, one of Swayambhu's daughter married to Daksha Prajapati. to whom Brahma had given the leading place among Prajapatis. Daksha had married had married and then had 16 daughters who were married to important Prajapatis and divinities, and the last one, Sati, being wedded to Rudra. Rudra is also known as Lord Shiva. And out of a feud between Daksha and Rudra, the destruction of the Yajna of Daksha by Rudra takes place. Several chapters of the Skanda deals with this subject. And another long episode dealt with the 5 following chapters is the story of Dhruva. Dhruva was the son of Swayambhu's son Uttanapada. So Uttanapada's son was Dhruva. So this is the story also being told in the 4th Skanda. Taunted by his stepmother, the boy is touched to the quick, goes into self-exile, meditates on Mahavishnu, gains his blessing, returns to his father, becomes the ruler of his time, and becomes one of the noted devotee kings in Hindu tradition. So we can see all these things. And then in the next 11 chapters, the circumstances leading to the advent of a great devotee, King Prithu, classed as an incarnation, and his rule devoted to the spread of the gospel of bhakti is described. His immediate predecessor, Vena, was a tyrant who was deposed. The great work of Prithu was to restore prosperity to the land that had been reduced to the state of famine by the misrule of Vena. It is also stated that the organization of the country into villages and towns was started first by Prithu. The story of his numerous Ashwamedha sacrifices and confrontation with Indra are vividly described. He was a great as an administrator and as a devotee. So he's saying they're showing, giving you a preview of what's going to come in these chapters. So it's so again, as we see that this Skanda is especially important because it gives an vivid account of the life and character of several devotee kings and how they fulfilled their onerous duties of state, at the same time lived a full devotional life. It is in life and behavior of great devotees in critical situations that we see divinity in operation, and their lives are therefore as important and holy as the incarnations in bringing the gospel of devotion to the heart of man. This is the relevance of the treatment of the reigns and achievements in the Purana. So we can see that through these lives of all these different kings and all these devotees, that it is why these stories are being narrated. That's why they are having this skanda here of several kings, of several devotees, and showing that while leading a life of duties, having a worldly life, also they can have a devotional life also. So it is not different from one another. And many people, divide this materialistic life separately from the spiritual life. So this is to show that they can go hand in hand with both of them together. And you can attain to a devotional life while leading a material life also. That's what all these stories are going to show you. And while being, some of us, have some duties, but here they are going to narrate the stories of great kings. So why they are going to show the stories of great kings? Because as you know, the king has so many duties, much more than an ordinary person. It's not to exemplify that, this king, that king attained to realization. But in spite of having so many duties in their life, and so many things to do, they still found time to devote to their spiritual practices and finally attain to the Lord, or to the supreme state. So that's why it is relevant here. And so here, so what happens is, now we are coming to the yajna, and that is the sacrificial yajnas, or the the different types of homas and other things conducted by the great kings. And so here they are describing this, especially of Daksha. And he is saying that Maitreya continued, saying that this is 4th Skanda, chapter 1 to 11. And Manu, Swayambhuva, had 3 well-known daughters, Akudi, Devahudi, and Prasudi. The Manu gave his first daughter in marriage to Prajapati Ruchi, according to the rite known as Putrika Dharma. This is the dharma to the daughter. And the understanding in it being that the sons born of that marriage will go to the father of the girl. To this, the Manu's wife, Shatarupa, also agreed. And Ruchi, radiant with his Brahmanic luster, begot in her, while fully absorbed in divine contemplation, a pair of twins, a boy and a girl. One of these, the boy, was none other than Mahavishnu incarnate as Yajna, while the girl, Dakshina, by name, was part of Sri Devi, the consort of Vishnu, who accompanies him wherever he incarnates. According to the stipulation made earlier, the Manu brought to his house Yajna, a boy of great spiritual luster, while the girl Dakshina was retained by Ruchi as his daughter. Yajna married Dakshina, who was in love with him, and begot her 12 issues, to the great joy of both. So again, there is the names of there and all these things, and so this they're saying the Manu gave his second daughter Devahudi to Kardama Prajapati, and this has already been narrated to you. So again, they're talking about the whole lineage, and I'm just skipping over the whole thing, and I'm going to the next chapter, and which is confrontation between Rudra and Daksha. That is chapter 2. And Vidura said, so now we have to understand, Vidura is talking to sage Maitreya. So he's asking this question: for what reason did Daksha, who loved his daughter very much, transgress that love and come into confrontation with the high-souled Sri Rudra? Who would come into confrontation with such a great being as Sri Rudra, who is a world teacher, not inimical to anyone, peaceful by nature, and ever engrossed in the bliss of the Atman? How did such great enmity arise between the father-in-law and the son-in-law? Why did Sadi Devi give up her life, which no one does lightly? And Maitreya said, so he was asking all these questions about Rudra, Lord Shiva. As you know, Lord Shiva is the greatest renunciate. He has nothing in his hand, and also he's completely smeared with ashes, and nobody can in any way have any kind of enmity towards him, except the fact that he is always in meditation. So he's asking this question, so what happened? So Maitreya is explaining. Once there was a great satra, a sacrifice lasting for many years of the Prajapatis, at which all the rishis and the devas, munis and agnis had assembled with their followers. And dazzling by his presence, that assembly, Daksha Prajapati luminous like the sun, came into the sacrificial hall, and all in that assembly, except Sri Rudra and Brahma, got up from their seats automatically, impelled as if it were by the Prajapati's aura. Worshipped duly by all assembled, Daksha made obeisance to Brahma, the creator of the world, and directed by him took his seat. Seeing that Sri Rudra, who was already seated there, did not show any gesture of recognition or cordiality towards him, Daksha became wild with rage and spoke with a slanting look of his eyes that seemed to burn everything before it. O Brahmarishis, Devas and Agnis, be a witness to what I speak. It is neither ignorance nor antagonism that prompts me to speak in this way, but what I know about the conduct of good men. So here, what happens is, because this great satra or sacrificial rites, which was lasting for many years, was conducted by the Daksha Prajapati. And so what happened was, when he entered into the assembly, everybody got up from their seats as if he, just by the Prajapati's aura, the light that was coming from him. So Daksha Prajapati, what happened was, Daksha was, of course, he paid his obeisance to Brahma, the creator, and because he knew that creator was none other than his great grandfather, and also just having that kind of a respect. But then when he looked at Rudra, Lord Shiva, who was seated there, in fact, what Rudra was his son-in-law, who was married to his daughter Sati. So what happened was, he was angered by the fact that his son-in-law did not get up and show respect. And who was his son-in-law? None other than the great Lord Shiva, who was ever established in that supreme state of samadhi. And for such a person, whether it's an animal, a cow that comes here, or Daksha Prajapati, there is no difference, because they see them as their own. And they see that divinity that is inherent in them in outside also. So it doesn't matter to them. So what happened was, he did not get up and show the proper respect to Daksha. And so since Rudra did not show that respect, he became so angry, thinking that he is the father-in-law, and the son-in-law should have shown that kind of a respect to his father-in-law. So he talks to the assembly, saying that all these people who are sitting there, Brahmarishis, Devas, and all other beings there, be a witness to what I speak. It is neither ignorance nor antagonism that prompts me to speak in this way, but what I know about the conduct of good men. This Rudra is a blot on the reputation of the guardian deities of the quarters. He is shameless by not observing the rules of propriety recognized by worthy men. This incorrigible fellow is guilty of the desecration of the norms of good life. Having married my noble and virtuous daughter before the sacred fire and holy Brahmanas, he has become my disciple. This fellow with the monkey's eyes has married my daughter with the beautiful eyes of a deer. And he ought to stand up before me, did not care even to utter a word of welcome. To this Rudra, who is devoid of good conduct, wretched, indecent, and a violator of the codes of dharma, I have alas given my daughter, though unwillingly, like one who teaches the Vedas to a Shudra. He generally lives and moves about in weird places like the cremation grounds, attended by goblins and ghosts, and dances there shamelessly naked and disheveled, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying like one deranged. He covers himself with the ashes of cremated bodies.
He wears as his ornaments the bones of dead bodies and the garlands of filthy things given by ghosts. He is wrongly called Shiva, the auspicious one. But he is in fact Ashiva, the most auspicious one. And himself intoxicated, he is the darling of all who have lost their senses by taking intoxicants. He is a lord of ghosts and goblins who are mere formations of the force of darkness. Alas, to this Rudra, who is unclean, cruel-hearted, and a master of intoxicated beings, I have given my very virtuous daughter at the commands of Brahma. Maitreya said, after thus insulting Rudra, who had done him no harm, Daksha purified his hands, sipped water ceremoniously, and pronounced the following curse on him. May this Rudra, the most depraved among the Devas, cease to receive any portion of yajna as his share, unlike Indra, Ubendra, and the other Devas. Though warned by many important personages, from among the assembled, Daksha would not refrain from pronouncing the curse. So in great anger, he cursed Rudra, left the sacrificial hall, and returned home. So you can see that from the very description of Daksha, I mean, in one sense, you can see so how demeaning it is. But the very fact that he is explaining and showing the different aspects of Lord Shiva and how elevated it is for as far as a spiritual seeker is concerned. He's saying he has monkey's eyes. And what is this monkey's eyes means is, he is keenly observing everything. And then, he's saying that he should have stood up before me and he did not even utter a word of welcome. And then what does he say? He generally moves about in weird places like cremation grounds. So that is the best place for sadhaks. Why? Because it reminds us the real nature of the body and where we are going to end up. And then he's saying he's attended by goblins and ghosts. And he's not being, attended by beautiful women. And what he's attended is by all these ghosts. And dances shamelessly, naked and disheveled. His hair is completely disheveled. And so he's dancing. Why is he dancing? Out of ecstasy, pure joy. And naked. So he's not concerned about clothing and what he wears and what he does not wear. Though he has one clothing, which is the skin. And then laughing sometimes, crying like one that is deranged. So you can see these descriptions which is befitting to a great saint, a great realized master like Amma. Amma also used to, when earlier days, used to laugh and cry. And sometimes she would be laughing for hours together, and sometimes she would be crying for hours together. And you might think, they're mentally deranged. And that is why they are doing like this. Of course, in one sense, there is, when you see the outwardly expressions of great saints, realized saints, and mentally deranged people, you can't see too much of a differentiation. But if you look carefully, of course, the mentally deranged people don't laugh and cry for hours together. And but whereas saints, because in the height of ecstasy, they keep crying. Sometimes if they start laughing, they keep laughing. And if they start crying, they keep crying for hours together. And, just like the example of Amma, when during bhajans, when she just goes up in ecstasy and says, ha ha ha, nobody can even imitate that laughter or that expression of their inner joy and that the expression of their state. So the very fact that he's being abused of the fact that he's showing all these things also shows the ignorance of Daksha. And actually, the very things which Daksha is abusing Lord Shiva is in fact an ornament to a person like Lord Shiva, which shows his state and which he's established. And what does he wear? He's saying he wears ornaments of dead bodies and garlands. So, actually, it's such a beautiful thing, because a sadhak, a spiritual seeker, should not wear things made of gold or adorning their body, which reminds them of their body consciousness. And he's saying that he's called wrongly Shiva, the auspicious one. And in fact, he's inauspicious. So this is what happens to many of us whose mind is not receptive enough to go and see a saint. Many people, when they come and see Amma, and when they see that, when their mind is not mature, what do? They see Amma as nothing but a woman, sometimes many as who's either insane, or they will say that, Amma is doing all these tricks or miracles and all these things, and then they just go away. So they are saying, describing here how his state is. His state, Daksha's state, is like a person who has taken intoxicants and lost his senses. So he's saying that. And he's saying that, so after having said all these things, he takes water and then pronounces this curse on Lord Rudra, and saying that deprived that Lord Rudra not receive any portion of the yajna. So during the sacrifice, they give sacrificial offerings to different gods and deities. So here he is saying that, look, let Lord Rudra not receive any more sacrificial offerings. And he left the hall. So we'll stop here for today and look at the rest in the next session. Om Amriteshwariye Namah. अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
सर्वमये सर्वेश्वर्यमये सचिन्मये चिन्मये
सर्वमये सर्वेश्वर्यमये सचिन्मये चिन्मये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
அறிவே அறிவின்னுறவே தவ ஸ்மிதமே இஹ ஆகமம்
அறிவே அறிவினுறவே தவ ஸ்மிதமே இஹ ஆகமம்
அறிவே அறிவின்னுறவே தவ ஸ்மிதமே இஹ ஆகமம்
அறிவே அறிவினுறவே தவ ஸ்மிதமே இஹ ஆகமம்
मनमे मनमोहिनी स्मरणं शोकमोह विनाशनम्
मनमे मनमोहिनी स्मरणं शोकमोहविनाशनम्
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
कलये आत्मनिलये लसिते प्रेम लसिते
कलये आत्मनिलये लसिते प्रेम लसिते
कलये आत्मनिलये लसिते प्रेम लसिते
लसिते प्रेम लसिते
तरुणी उर्वरं नी शिववाम भाग निलये
करुणी और वरुणी शिववाम भाग निलये
शिववाम भाग निलये
शिववाम भाग निलये
शिववाम भाग निलये
शिववाग भाग निलये
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमयी प्रेममयी अमृतानन्दमयी अमृतानन्दमयी
अमृतमये प्रेममये अमृतानन्दमये अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतमयी प्रेममयी अमृतानन्दमयी अमृतानन्दमयी
अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतानन्दमयी
अमृतानन्दमये
अमृतानन्दमयी
जय जय गणनाद गजानन कष्ट हरो हमारा
जय 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 गणनाथ गजानन कष्ट हरो हमारा
जय 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 गणनाद गजानन कष्ट हरो हमारा
जय 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 गणनाथ गजानन कष्ट हरो हमारा
हृदय से देखे तुम हो स्वामी प्रेम भक्ति के दादा
रिद्धि सिद्धि के तुम हो स्वामी प्रेम भक्ति के दाता
हृदय से देखे तुम हो स्वामी प्रेम भक्ति के दादा
रिद्धि सिद्धि के तुम हो स्वामी प्रेम भक्ति के दाता
अंधकार में
डूबे मन को, कार में डूबे मन को,
अंधकार में डूबे मन को,
अंधकार में डूबे मन को,
कर दो अब उजियारा। अंधकार में
डूबे मन को, कर दो अब उजियारा।
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
बार बार प्रणाम गजानन, बार बार प्रणाम। तुझको मेरा
पहला वंदन, बार बार प्रणाम गजानन, बार बार प्रणाम।
जय 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 गणनाद गजानन, कष्ट हरो हमारा।
जय 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 गणनाथ गजानन, कष्ट हरो हमारा।
रूप तेरा है कितना प्यारा, माँ पार्वती के बाला।
रूप तेरा है कितना प्यारा, माँ पार्वती के बाला।
रूप तेरा है कितना प्यारा, माँ पार्वती के बाला।
रूप तेरा है कितना प्यारा, माँ पार्वती के बाला।
माना माद पिता जग सारा,
माना मात पिता जग सारा,
माना मात पिता जग सारा,
माना मात पिता जग सारा।
परम ज्ञान फल पाया,
माना मात पिता जग सारा, परम ज्ञान फल पाया।
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन,
बार बार प्रणाम गजानन, बार बार प्रणाम।
तुझको मेरा पहला वंदन, बार बार प्रणाम गजानन, बार बार प्रणाम।
जय 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 गणनाद गजानन, कष्ट हरो हमारा।
जय 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 गणनाथ गजानन, कष्ट हरो हमारा।
गणपति कष्ट हरो हमारा।
दुखी कष्ट हरो हमारा।
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम
बोलो श्याम गाओ श्याम
बोलो श्याम गाओ श्याम
बोलो श्याम गाओ श्याम
बोलो श्याम गाओ श्याम
तेरा नाम प्रिय हरि नाम श्याम राधे श्याम
तेरा नाम प्रिय हरि नाम श्याम राधे श्याम
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम
नडवर श्याम ब्रज घन श्याम राधे श्याम
नटवर श्याम रजगन श्याम राधे श्याम
नडवर श्याम ब्रज घन श्याम राधे श्याम
नटवर श्याम रजगन श्याम राधे श्याम
नाचो श्याम मम हृदय श्याम श्याम राधे श्याम
नाचो श्याम मम हृदय श्याम
श्याम राधे श्याम
नाचो
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे
Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Radhe, Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam.
हे गोविंद गोबरी पालक बाल सखा बलराम श्याम.
हे गोविंद गोपरि पालक बाल सखा बलराम श्याम.
हे गोविंद गोबरी पालक बाल सखा बलराम श्याम.
हे गोविंद गोपरि पालक बाल सखा बलराम श्याम.
गोवर्धन गिरिधारी कालिय मर्दन वैभव राधे राधेश.
गोवर्धन गिरिधारी कालिय मर्दन वैभव
राधे राधेश. गोवर्धन गिरिधारी कालिय मर्दन वैभव राधे राधेश.
गोवर्धन गिरिधारी कालिय मर्दन वैभव राधे राधे श्याम.
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम.
राधे श्याम राधे श्याम राधे राधे श्याम राधे श्याम.
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 जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारे.
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी.
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारे.
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी.
पीदवसन वै जयन्ती माला.
पीतवसन वै जयन्ती माला.
पीदवसन वै जयन्ती माला.
पीतवसन वै जयन्ती माला.
श्याम भरण तनु नयन विशाला.
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 जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारे.
जय आरती राम तुम्हारी।
पीद मुकुड़ कस सारंग सोहे,
पीत मुकुट कस सारंग सोहे,
पीद मुकुड़ कस सारंग सोहे,
पीत मुकुट कस सारंग सोहे,
सीतारामणि रघुमन मोहे,
सीतारामणि रघुमन मोहे,
सीतारामणि रघुमन मोहे,
सीतारामणि रघुमन मोहे,
नारद सारद मंगल गावे,
नारद शारद मंगल गावे,
नारद सारद मंगल गावे,
नारद शारद मंगल गावे,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा।
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी,
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी,
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी,
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी।
शत्रुघ्न हो जय लक्ष्मण भरता,
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 आरती कर कौसल्या माता,
आरती कर कौसल्या माता,
आरती करू कौसल्या माता,
आरती कर कौसल्या माता,
षण्मुख चरण सखे अनुवीरा,
षण्मुख चरण सखे हनुवीरा,
षण्मुख चरण सखे अनुवीरा,
षण्मुख चरण सखे हनुवीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा,
हरि हरि हे गुण राज गंभीरा।
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी,
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 श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम,
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 श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम
जगदधि राम
जगदधि राम
जगदेग राम
जगदेग राम
जानकी राम
जानकी राम
श्री राम जय राम जय जय 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 राम
जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी
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 जय जय आरती जय जय आरती जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी
जय जय आरती जय जय आरती जय जय आरती राम तुम्हारी जगजननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमयी मंगल आरती मातर्भवानी अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी जनमन निज सुखदायिनी माता अमृतानन्दमयी मंगलकारिणी वन्दे जननी अमृतानन्दमयी माता सकलागम निगमादिषु चरिते अमृतानन्दमयी
क्षीरामय हर जननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये प्रेम रसामृत वर्षिणी माता अमृतानन्दमयी प्रेम भक्ति संदायिनी माता अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये समदमदायिनी मनलयकारिणी अमृतानन्दमये सततं मम हृदि वसदा देवी अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये परिदोधार निरंतर हृदये अमृतानन्दमये परमहंस पद निलये देवी अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये हे जननी जनि मरण निवारिणि अमृतानन्दमये हे श्रुत जन परिपालिनि जयदाम अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये सुरजन पूजित जय जगदम्बा अमृतानन्दमये सहज समाधि सुधन्ये देवी अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये माता अमृतानन्दमये जगजननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमयी मंगल आरती माता भवानी अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी जय बोलो सद्गुरु माता अमृतानंदमयी देवी की ओम असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ओम शांति 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 ओम लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु ओम शांति 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 ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम।